It's not always burnout. Sometimes it's just emotional immaturity. And that's what we're going to unbox today, because you can have both or you can have just one, but we don't want to confuse them. So this way you know how to work on each of them. But let's jump into that right now so you don't get burned out. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It is your girl, Lori. We are in the March time. It is almost St. Patrick's Day, so happy soon to be St. Patrick's Day. Really excited to kind of jump into the spring, I guess. It's not the fall, but I will take it. And I'm really excited to kind of prepare for my birthday. My birthday is next month. It's really just a few weeks away. And I'm excited. I'm going to be 54 years old. I like to kind of use that as my new year, not so much January 1. And I don't put a lot of pressure on myself around my birthday, but I like to kind of have goals that I'm going to reach. And I recently got the Amazon Kindle Scribe, which I adore and I love, and I can always tell you more about that at a later time, but it's really helpful for my productivity. It's helpful for me to keep everything in one place. And I like to create a word of the year. So in January, I create one or two words and I work around that, but everything is fluid, right? So it can change. So around my birthday in April, I look and I evaluate and say, okay, are these things still my priority? Am I behind? Not behind, but am I not as far along as I want? Is it important? So these are all important things, because if you don't do it, you are going to get burned out. And I kind of go through burnout a good amount of times. And it's going to be normal with anybody who does anything in life, being a parent, having anything, but I have my own business and I'm working on my book. And, you know, all of these things, well, books are basically almost finished, almost done. And it's just so difficult when I do it all, right? I record the podcast, I edit it, I make sure it's up, I do all my short forms, I'm writing my book, I have clients. So that alone can let you know what the burnout is. So I need to be strategically planned, need to adapt, but strategically planned, because if not, I will experience burnout. There will be a worksheet, as always, that's going to really help you understand the difference and give you a little bit of guidance on how you can start working on that. And we'll talk a lot about that here. But if that is something that you're interested in, jump over to Patreon, patreon.com/The Positivity Experience. You can also visit my website. Don't forget to get the free workbook. There's also getting ready to be an additional, a little bit of a paid workbook that's going to go on top of that. So if that's your jam, pop over there, visit me, and you can get your links anywhere that you are listening to this right now in the show description. So I do want to talk to you a little deeper about this emotional burnout, because we use the word burnout. We use the word tired. Sometimes we use the word lazy. And I want to unbox those two things, because as mentioned in the beginning, you can have both. You can have emotional immaturity and you can have emotional burnout. Now, emotional immaturity is something that you're going to come encounter with a lot from other people and even from yourself. So I can only tell you what it's like when I'm burned out, but we'll go through that a little bit so you can evaluate some of the overextending, right? When you go into constantly saying yes of things. And now some of that goes into burnout, but it also goes into emotional immaturity. Because if you're constantly saying yes, even when you're drained, later you might explode. You might break down, you might explode. And then you wonder, God, am I burned out or am I just emotionally immature? This is something you hear me talk a lot about. I'm going to tell you right now, no needs to be your favorite word. No, thank you. You don't have to be rude. You can say no, thank you. People are going to take no or no, thank you as rude in general if you're not doing something that they want. You have to remember that if you keep saying yes to things, you're saying no to something else. So I want to kind of sit there for a minute with that. And that's yin and yang. Anything in life is going to have a positive, not negative, but let's say there's a duality to it. Anything that you do in life. So if you're constantly saying yes to things, you are inadvertently saying no to yourself. This goes a lot into productivity. And I was saying in my short form, if you guys want me to talk a little bit more about productivity, meal planning, how you can reach your goals, which we talk a little bit about here. But if you want something a little deeper, if you can pop over to, say, my Instagram or send me an email and say, yes, this is some things that I'd really like to talk about, because I want to make sure that I'm bringing you guys the information that you want and or need, or kind of both. But this is a big piece of it. Because if you're saying yes, yes, I can, yes, 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 you are saying no to your goals. You're saying no to yourself. You're saying no to putting yourself as a priority. Here's where that becomes an issue. You're worried about hurting somebody's feelings, which we already know where that comes from. It comes from enmeshment. Go to listen to one of the 200 episodes I have. You'll see where it is. It'll be the emotional maturity, yes, but it'll also be your people pleasing, which we know is manipulation, not intention, but it is there. You're in that space to where you don't want somebody to be disappointed. You don't want somebody's feelings to get hurt. I got to tell you, it's going to happen. If you are honestly putting yourself as a priority, honestly making sure that you have these boundaries, somebody's feelings are going to get hurt, and that's not your issue. This is a big piece of why you're burned out. It's a huge piece of it, actually, because if you're always saying yes, anything that you want to do is suddenly like not important. And I'm not asking you not to be a team player. I'm not asking you not to, extend yourself from time to time. I'm not asking you to do that. But I am saying that until you are able to say no to things, listen, in the beginning, you might feel guilty of it. You're brand new here. You're brand new. So in the beginning, you might be like, oh my God, I feel like an asshole or whatever it is that you think you feel like. But I got to tell you, when you start saying no to things and you start to see, well, wait a minute, if I say no and no, thank you, they're not really looking at, well, maybe that's best for me. They're getting pissed off because I'm not doing what it is that they want me to do. And as you go on this healing journey, you may already see this, by the way, you start to look at people's patterns. Don't judge, not asking you to judge, be observant. And you'll start to see, oh, I see what this person is doing here. There's a guilt trip here. There's, this person's disappointed and that's fine, but they're really disappointed because they assumed I was going to do something. And then I said I wasn't going to do something. And now they're upset with me, but they're upset with me because they assumed, because in the past you would have said yes. So just know that you may struggle with this in the beginning, but you're going to have to push through that because you will stay emotionally exhausted, you will break down, and you will explode. Let's talk about that piece of it. Now you're walking around and everybody thinks you're a maniac. Everybody's like, oh my God, they are so over the top. Well, because you're walking around and you're constantly saying yes to things, in turn, somewhere in your mind, you're like, well, I'm doing them this favor. They're going to have to do that back, or they would do that, or, I would do that. They should do that. There's a combination of things happening, but you will inadvertently at times explode. Because you're just done. But that's where you have to take accountability, right? You do have to take accountability of this. And that's why boundaries are important and they must carry a consequence. If this, then this. If this continues, then this will happen. And until you do that, you're going to always feel disappointed. Because if you're always saying yes to things, not only are you going to have burnout and breakdown, you're going to be really pissy. Because now you're going to feel like people are taking advantage of you. You're going to feel like, well, I always put myself out. They don't do that. Okay, but let's be aware this is you always saying yes. So you really want to kind of catch that because emotional exhaustion, that's not always burnout. That's not always burnout. Sometimes it's a sign of underdeveloped emotional regulation. And we're going to separate those two today. But let's talk about that. Emotional dysregulation. And you know that you probably hear that all over the world. If you're in therapy, if you're listening to other people, podcasts, you're going to hear emotional dysregulation and emotional immaturity. So the dysregulation piece of it can really be worked through in a whole different way, but the emotional immaturity is really what we want to focus on. And those are things that not only will cause burnout, but a lot of resentment. And in turn, we're back to where we are. So let's go through and actually define emotional burnout so you're not walking around thinking that that's what you're in. If you are in a chronic, all the time, emotional depletion caused by constantly overextending yourself, which is common, by the way, extremely common in overgivers, people pleasers, and those lacking boundaries. So if you're a people pleaser, if you are an overgiver, you can make that any word you want. If you're an overgiver, and if you're always trying so hard to make sure that everybody is okay, you are going to be in a space where you have emotional burnout. Because you can only walk around with a bucket with a hole in it, right? So think of you're in a boat. Let's say a boat. You're in a boat and there's a hole in the bottom of the boat. Somebody drilled a hole in the bottom of the boat. I don't care how much water you put in there. If you don't keep putting water in there, what's going to happen is it's going to drain out. At some point, you're going to have to constantly do that. You're going to get a little annoyed. You're going to be like, oh my God, my arms are tired. This is a pain in the ass. Why am I constantly doing that? Well, until you repair the hole at the bottom, this is going to be your life. You're going to sit in that boat and you're going to constantly be putting it in there and you're going to be like, hello, why is nobody helping me with this water in the boat? It is your responsibility to fix that hole in the bottom of the boat. Because if not, you will stay in this. Now, when you're chronically there, let's talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to talk to you about it from my perspective. Now, I don't overextend now. I will be there. I will support you, but I'm not an overextender. I'm most certainly not a people pleaser, but I wasn't always this way. I was not always this way. I was quite the opposite, matter of fact. When I tell you my emotional burnout, not only did that, it led to overthinking. Remember how we were talking about overthinking last week? Led to the overthinking. What else? And it's problem, like you're trying to not necessarily solve a problem as much as you are going, I need to understand it. And it gives you this constant overthinking, constant obsessive thinking about what's going on and why it isn't. That's going to cause anybody emotional exhaustion. So let's do this. Okay. Now just hear me out and tell me how this sounds when we're done. And it's going to be very brief. So you wake up in the morning, assuming you've slept at all. So you wake up in the morning and you're not even stretching. You're not doing that. Immediately you go off to the races. Oh my God. Okay. I got this meeting. Holy hell. Okay. I got this meeting and I know that they're going to ask me to do more. Well, I can't tell them no. So of course I'm going to tell them yes. And then my mom messaged me last night and asked me if I could help her by picking up something. Yeah, of course I'm going to do that. And then I still have to do the laundry and I got to make sure that my taxes are there. And I just don't know what to do. I don't have any time for myself. That's all the things that are going to cause emotional burnout, but that's also the things that you are going to allow yourself to be overwhelmed with. This isn't about everybody else. This is about you. So yes, you might need to get your taxes done. They might not have to be done at 9:00 this morning. You're not going to lose 10 pounds today. So you can't be like, oh man, 10 pounds is a lot to lose. Yes. 1 to 2 pounds is the healthy way of losing it. So stop trying to do it today because then that's going to cause more emotional burnout. So not only are you saying yes to other things, you're telling yourself that you got to say yes to everything that has to be done today. How is that not going to cause emotional exhaustion and burnout? That's emotional burnout. When you lack boundaries, you're going to have emotional burnout. Because now you're like, damn it, I got to go talk to this person. I can't stand talking to them. They just drone on and on. Even when I tell them I got to leave at 2, they're keeping going. Well, they can keep going. That's not them. They're not overstepping a boundary. You're just not holding it. So when you're clear with boundaries, and always remember when you're setting a boundary, it's never individual. It's never just about mom. It's never just about the boss. No, it is what is valuable within your time. Remember that the boundaries are yours. Do not individually make them. Do not emotionally make them. No, we're not doing that. But it has to carry a consequence. So in turn, if you're lacking boundaries, now you're frustrated that you've told your mom 16 times not to call you at 8:00 at night, but she keeps going because you didn't give her a consequence. And if you did, you didn't hold it. So of course, that's going to cause emotional exhaustion. And then the deeper issue, something to ask yourself right now, why are you allowing yourself to be exhausted? Why? Why are you allowing yourself that burnout? Listen, shit's going to happen. Every day isn't going to be a cakewalk. And some weeks, good God, they are going to be a lot. So some weeks, some months, you will be emotionally burned out. That should be the exception, not the rule. The exception, not the rule. So if you say to yourself, am I overextending? Do this evaluation for yourself right now. Am I overextending? Well, first you have to describe what that looks like. Are you overextending yourself and saying yes to everything and putting anything that you want to do on the back burner? Are you trying to people please, which we know is fake? You can't people please everybody. There are people who are going to can't stand you and there are going to be people who are going to can't stand me. And it is what it is. That's not any of our problems. Okay. So you got to ask yourself, am I trying to please someone because I don't want to be disliked? So of course, in turn, you're going to overextend yourself or you're always going to be on the ready. It's one thing to be supportive. You can't always be on the ready. And then if you have no boundaries, how the hell else are you supposed to feel? You're not going to feel good. You're going to feel burned out like hell. You have your stress hormone, your cortisol levels. That's going to lead to a hell of a lot of mental fog, irritability, and attachment. So as you're getting emotionally burned out, your cortisol levels are raising. Your stress hormone, right? We've talked about that. You know a lot about it. And it's always funny when people are like, I just count to 10. If that worked, we'd all be great. But there is some truth to the pattern interrupt that we were talking about a few weeks ago. But when your cortisol levels spike, and it could be genetic, it can be a lot of things can cause it, situation. But when that happens and your cortisol levels are high, you do start to get a little brain fog, like sometimes a lot of brain fog. And then you're irritable because you're irritable as hell, because now we're back to the exploding. And a little detached. Now, I don't mean living in detachment the healthy way. Go listen to that podcast for sure. But I mean detachment of like, I'm not going to deal with it. Well, why? You got to deal with something. Your avoidance of conflict doesn't make it go away. Look at it as a cat litter box. Okay. Cat goes in, goes to the bathroom, puts cat litter over it. So it's covering it up, but it's still there. Oh, it's still there. And if you don't clean it, guess what's going to happen? It's going to compile and it's all this stuff is going to pile up. And at some point that cat's going to be like, I am not using the shit anymore. But it doesn't make it go away. It doesn't make it go away. So even if you're avoiding it, listen, avoidance is the easiest thing in the planet to do. That's why social media is a thing. And I will tell you in about every other podcast, stop surfing the internet, stop going on your socials all day long. You got to knock it off, right? I'm going to tell you right now, that will cause burnout. That will abso-freaking-lutely cause emotional burnout. Being on socials and constantly avoiding will keep you in stress hormones, whether you don't think it or not. Your body doesn't care because your body is in a dopamine depletion because all you're doing is chasing dopamine. That's why you scroll. That's why you do those fast fixes, right? Fast fashion, all of these things. So you're constantly getting a dopamine. Well, guess what? At some point, you're either going to have to keep going. And at any point, that's going to tank out. You're going to have dopamine depletion. In turn, your cortisol levels are going to raise. So it's not just about get off social so you can sleep better. It's get off social so your damn hormones can come down. These responses, the hormones and all of these things that are going on in your body and brain, you are in control of this part of it. Nobody else. So if you're like, okay, and I'll tell you what I do with some of my clients, because you might go, I'm so addicted to it, which we know is a true thing. Social media addiction is a true thing. I have people who take their apps off their phone completely. You don't have to deactivate your accounts. They take it off completely and they'll put it on for a limited time on the weekends, not at night, even during the week. No. What the hell do you think you're going to miss out on? I promise you, shit is going on fast all the time. You're not missing out on anything. And I will be honest, a lot of my clients come from social media. Most of them do. Because how else are you going to find me? But that doesn't mean never go on. It just means go on in small increments. And so that's one. Sometimes people, that doesn't even work for them. I have them take their phone out and put it in the car underneath their seat. No lie. Because then it's like, oh, okay, I need to go out. But we try to do pattern interrupts. So the social media itself will cause burnout. It will absolutely cause burnout. So if you're not willing to give yourself a limit and go, what else do I need to do? Which is why you create a to-do list every single morning. And you don't bring yesterday's stuff in today, even if it's something you have to do. This gives you a fresh start of the day. In turn, that decreases your emotional burnout. Because it isn't just about overextending. It's about doing that with yourself. It's not even about other people. It's you're trying to build Rome in a day, and that doesn't work that way. You're trying to lose the 10 pounds by the end of the month, and here it is, let's say it's the 15th. Well, you're not going to do that. And if you do it, it's not going to be healthy. So until you're willing to say, let me lower these cortisol levels, let me put some boundaries in, not just with others, but with myself. So this could be socials, it could be anything else. Breathe. Okay, just breathe. I know we all want to feel good. We all want to accomplish things. We all want to minimize as best as we can. It isn't going to happen overnight. You want to talk about burnout, never do anything, feel lazy, procrastinate. That's what you do. Go ahead and keep overdoing your plate. You got to be honest. Busy is not the same as productive. Let me repeat that. Busy is not the same as productive. You can run around, you can do all these things, busy, 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 busy. Well, guess what? You're not productive. You're just busy. And there's a big difference. I can help you get there if you want, I can help you. But let's go into that. So when you are defining emotional immaturity, you've heard this a lot. You have your emotional dysregulation, super strong reactions to expecting others to manage your feelings. If you are expecting anybody else to manage your feelings, that is emotional immaturity. Feelings are not facts. Thoughts are not facts. They are not. So if you're looking for someone else to manage those feelings, you are in dysregulation. And you will always do that, by the way. You'll always chase that. Now that's absolutely rooted in underdeveloped mechanisms, coping mechanisms in childhood. A lot of our stuff happens in childhood. You're like, damn it, man. Like, can't y'all just get your shit together? No, because you are only going to be the product of the emotional maturity and tools that the person before you had. I mean, that's just life. That's just life. So your caregivers or parents or whomever probably didn't have that level of maturity. It's not an excuse. It's a fact. So if somebody doesn't have it or they don't have the tools to give you, how the hell are you supposed to find the coping mechanism? Why the hell are you listening to this podcast right now? Because you're trying to figure it out. You know, we're not given that. In a perfect magical world, I would love for people to teach that in school early on. It's not the same as gentle parenting. That does not always work. Okay, that's not the same thing, but it's understanding the emotional regulation. What are some coping strategies? It's going to be hard. If you have ADHD, depression, anxiety, doesn't mean it's impossible. We just have to kind of ramp it up and hit it from a different angle. But since the magic world, it does not exist. And in many ways, there's still such a horrible stigma behind social media. Good God. Well, that too, but a horrible stigma around mental health. Yes, it's better. Yes, it is better. For sure. But, however, it still isn't great. It could be so much better. That being said, you have to remember that no one is responsible for your feelings. I know you hate that, and I know you want so badly for somebody else to be in charge of that. But why? Because the moment you're given somebody that baton, that racing baton, to control your emotions, essentially is what you're saying, your feelings, you are always giving your power away. So you got to learn it. I don't expect you to learn it overnight. You can't always do it on your own. So you need some guidance. But if you're always having strong reactions or you're always expecting other people to do things as you would, or in general, that's going to be rooted in an underdeveloped coping mechanism. Dependency on external validation or avoiding discomfort. That's emotional immaturity. If you are not emotionally mature, it's not like necessarily a negative, it's an awareness. It's also a fact. So there's no scenario where you have emotional maturity and do these things. That's not emotional maturity. Emotional maturity is like, all right, well, that was very discomfortable. Good God. Uncomfortable. Let me sit with it. Let me work through it. Not let me run from it. Not let me blame somebody else. Not let me wait for somebody else to make me feel better. No, it's the opposite of that. That doesn't mean you can't have communication. That doesn't mean that you can't articulate your feelings behind something that somebody did or said or whatever. You can absolutely do that. The problem, so here's the difference between emotional immaturity and maturity, is immaturity says you, the specific you, Tom, whatever, Tom has to do those things. No, emotional maturity says this is my non-negotiable. I would love Tom to do that, but I don't expect Tom to do that. It might not be Tom. You might need Miranda. It doesn't matter. So you can see where the emotional dysregulation comes, because a lot of times you might even have dissonance. You know you want to be emotionally mature, but guess what? You're going to have to do a lot of work to get there. Are you willing? Are you willing? Nobody needs to be your cheerleader. Good God. No, nobody has to be your cheerleader in your corner. You do, but no one really cares about your journey any more than you do. Sometimes if they jump in too much, we know that that's control, but no one really cares about your journey more than you. It's the same thing if somebody owns a business. You own a business and it is your baby, and you have somebody running it and they're doing a great, they're doing good. But at the end of the day, they don't really care about that business as much as you do, because it's your baby to rock. So it's no different here. And I mean, and that's just a fact. If you've ever said to yourself, I don't understand why they're not doing this. This means a lot to you. You got to add that part. This means a lot to you. And the other emotional immaturity comes when you want other people to have the same feeling about what lights you up. No, you don't. Everybody doesn't have to do the same things. This is where the world of humans can really work. I judge no one. I observe. If it's serving my growth and it's promoting who I want to be and what I want around me, then absolutely. If it isn't, then I'm not going to go with it. I'm not going to screw with it. But I don't need everybody to be on that same page, nor do you. Now, again, we go into the emotional burnout by saying yes to everything and people pleasing because you want your mom to be your biggest cheerleader. That might be what you want, but that might not be something that's going to happen. So then we go into radical acceptance. Go back and listen to that podcast. The radical acceptance piece of it. Things are going to be as they are. People are going to people. Life is going to life. And it doesn't always have to be the way you want it to be. That's a fact. So if you're always looking for the external validation or you're like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. Well, yeah, it's uncomfortable. But isn't it uncomfortable to stay in the same situation over and over and over again, expecting it to be different? That's uncomfortable. Just because you're comfortable in chaos doesn't mean it's the healthiest thing for you. So you got to say, why am I avoiding the unknown? Why am I avoiding that? Yeah, you're not supposed to have the answers. That's how you go through life and figure out life. You start some new company, you might have the skills of doing something, but everybody does it different. So you're still going to have to come in and learn. It's the same thing. Now, how can you really tell the difference? Because a lot of times they overlap each other. So it's not necessarily going to be extremely defined, but this is going to be a way that you're going to unbox it and say, where do I land mostly? And then we can go deeper to which one it is. And again, they can both happen, but there will always be one that is more of the primary. So as you're listening to this, say, oh, okay, let's say you're like, I have this. But which one do you have more of, right? This is what you want to work on, because at that point, they do overlap. So as you're working on one, you'll get the benefit for the other one. Burnout is overdoing. So just listen to that. Overdoing. Immaturity is overreacting. Overdoing, overreacting. So burnout is not overreacting. Emotional immaturity is overreacting. Burnout is, I say yes too much. So you can see how both of those can still intersect with each other. And you might go, well, I do both. I'm overdoing and I'm overreacting. Okay, I hear you. But there's a deeper issue than that. It's not just these leaves up here in the tree. We want to get to the why, what it is that you're expecting, why you're overreacting as far as your emotional dysregulation. Is it because you're overdoing? But which one is more? Or do you feel like you're overreacting more? Do you feel like you're overdoing more? And then that's where you want to look. Burnout feels like depletion, and immaturity feels like emotionally violence. Like you have the emotional violence. It goes back to the dysregulation of your feelings. So if you're always finding yourself short-tempered, overreacting, these things, that's emotional immaturity. Again, it can be caused by emotional burnout, but that's it. Burnout itself leads to numbness. Immaturity leads to outbursts. So you can see a commonality with emotional immaturity, right? Overreaction, constantly going off the deep end. You have these outbursts coming out of nowhere. That's emotional immaturity. I mean, it happens all the time. But burnout is like, oh my God, I don't even feel like myself. I'm just numb. I feel like I'm on the outside looking in. Then that can lead a little bit. I'm very cautious in saying that, but that can lead a little bit to disassociation. I don't know if you've ever had disassociation, but that is sometimes as though you're in your body and you're living, but you don't feel like you're in your body. You kind of feel like the world is going on around you. Your body is moving, but you're like, how the hell is my body moving? You just feel like you're on the outside of a snow globe and you're watching life happen. And then sometimes you feel like, well, I'm disassociated, but I feel like I'm going crazy. So if I'm going crazy, then, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Well, burnout can lead to that. That's not the only cause of it, but burnout can absolutely lead to that. There can be a time where you just feel so numb and so out of sorts because you are burned out. You are burned out. I know you've seen celebrities or singers or even athletes, and they're like, okay, listen, man, like I got to cancel my tour for right now. I got to cancel my tour, my next 6 shows. Sorry, we'll reschedule them because I need to rest. And some people can be like, well, I don't understand. Like, you're just out singing. You have no idea what goes into that. You have no idea what's going on in somebody's head. And traveling is constantly going to be burnout in itself. So you have to be aware of where you are struggling and then focus on that. Yes, it's going to be a lot. Yes, it's going to be hard. But if you're in that space where you're constantly overreacting and getting constantly triggered by these outbursts, that's emotional immaturity. And we can absolutely work on that. That doesn't mean that it's some kind of a weird emotional death sentence. It doesn't mean that way. So let's talk a little bit about the science, because we got to talk a little bit about the science. So burnout affects the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. That impairs your memory and your decision making. So if you always find yourself, not always, because I mean, it can be Alzheimer's or anything like that, dementia. It can absolutely be that way. So I'm not saying, I mean, be aware of your memory, your lapse in memory or your brain fog. I can tell you one of the things, now some of that's my ADHD too. So there's a thin line of ADHD and emotional burnout there, and they can cause it, right? And constant ADHD where you're going, go, your brain is doing all these things, that can cause emotional exhaustion. But I don't think I told you the other day, I went to put my almond milk in the pantry. And I was confident. I opened up that pantry like it lived there. I opened up the pantry, I went to put it in, and I was like, this doesn't fit on the shelf. Well, yeah, because it doesn't freaking belong there. So I laughed at myself because that's what you got to do. And, I can put, this is ADHD. I can put down my phone or anything else, and I have zero clue where I put it. So you can see how that can cause even like an outburst a little bit, because you're like, what the hell? Why can't I find this? So you can kind of see where they overlap. But if your prefrontal cortex and your hippocampus is all kinds of jacked up, your decision making is going to be completely off the rails. You're not going to be able to make a good decision. And that's in the brain. So in order to kind of calm that down a little bit, we got to take some things off your plate. If you can delegate something, delegate it. Do not delegate because you need it done a certain way. Don't not delegate doing the dishes because you need your dishwasher, loaded a certain way. No, you're doing that yourself. So you're going to have to be willing to let go of some of the control too. Because if you're still trying to control the narrative, you're going to be emotionally burned out anyway. So they're doing the dishes. In your back of your mind, you're going, oh my God, I know that I just saw them put that in the wrong place. Why would you put that down there? Why? So now you're giving yourself burnout anyway, because you're not passing the baton. People don't have to do it your way. There are not a million, but there are a lot of ways to get to from A to Z. And it isn't always A, B, C, D all the way down. There's so many letters. Was it 26 letters? I don't know. I think it's like 26 letters in the alphabet. You have all kinds of different variables that you can do to get to Z. So the biggest thing that you also have to ask yourself is part of this emotional burnout my control? Because if you're trying to control people, you're trying to control the narrative, you want help, but then you only want it a certain way. You want help, but it has to be done this moment. And that's not helping you. That's not delegation. You see this a lot with micromanaging in a business. You're like, bro, why are you over top of me? Why are you having meetings to have meetings and emails and you're asking me 6 times? Don't hire me if you don't think I can do the job. Because that's going to create a toxic work environment. Micromanagers aren't helping anybody. Micromanagers are control freaks. It's exactly what they are. And so if you are in a control area, and let's say you're a control freak, let's say you're dealing with your ego, you're doing all of those things, of course you're going to be burned out. You want people to do the laundry, not that way. Well, they didn't fold that shirt, right? Gives a damn. Take your socks, throw them in a drawer. Why do the socks have to be folded? That's your stuff. Not everybody has that same organizational pattern. Everybody isn't a ladybug or a butterfly. And that only matters when you understand productivity styles. But not everybody is that way. So sometimes people need it all put away. Other times people need it on the counter to see it. But it can still get done. So you got to say, is my control allowing myself to be burned out? Now, you also have decision making. So when you're activated in all of those areas, hell, shit's going to go right out the window. You're going to have bad decisions. You're made bad decisions. So emotional immaturity is linked to an overactive amygdala, which we know to be your like survivor brain, and an underdeveloped prefrontal regulation. Okay, so you can see how they can kind of all go together. So you do have some practical solutions, and then we'll go back and give you some. Now, practical solutions means you got to do the damn thing. Don't just look at it and be like, that's a great idea. Well, who gives a damn if you're not going to use it? So you have burnout recovery. Number one, you have got to prioritize your rest and set clear boundaries and delegate tasks. Kind of what we were just saying. So let's go through each one. Prioritize rest. I cannot begin to tell you the amount of people who go, well, I don't know. I feel like I should always be doing something. No, there's a few things happening there. One could be something that somebody put on you in childhood, like if you lay around, you're lazy, blah, 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 blah. And then the other side of that can also be avoidance. You're like, oh God, I have so many things to do. Yeah, that also means you want to avoid yourself. So yes, it's okay to sit down, put your feet up, order Chinese food, maybe get a bottle of wine or a big bottle of water, sit down and watch Netflix. If you want to watch Netflix all day, do that. Don't do it on a regular. You don't want to do that. But don't be on social media all day. We're not going to do that. But read books, do some coloring, do some crochet, pick up paint. I don't know. Do a puzzle, like an actual jigsaw puzzle. By the way, get a jigsaw puzzle. Get an actual full-on jigsaw puzzle, not on your iPad. It is so good for your brain. And they, I feel like every day they find out more benefits to things. It's so good, especially if you are, I like to get one with a lot of color that's kind of hard. You don't have to start with a hard one in the beginning. I like the little pieces. No, I don't. Let me not lie to you. I don't like the little pieces. How I get frustrated. So I say, okay, why is this frustrating me? Well, I'm not getting done fast enough. I feel like there's way too many pieces. But I have to take a breath. And I was okay, I'm just going to get a handful of these and flip them over and put them in the pile that they need to be in. That's it. So you got to ask yourself, why is it that you're not prioritizing rest? I promise you this, without all doubt, with a shadow of a doubt, all those things that you're worried about doing, all those things that you need to accomplish. I love that. Put it on your to-do list, put a pen in it. If you got hit by a bus, you walked right out your house, got hit by a bus. Here you are, worried about how the world's going to go on without you. You're not going to be around. So it's going to be what it's going to be. So if you're constantly in a space of worrying about, well, but these people, and what if this does, the life will go on. Life will go on and they will figure it out. So if that's the perspective you got to put on, then put that on. Because all of this time that you're saying, I can't rest and I can't take a break and I'm lazy and I'm doing, no, you cannot, I know you heard this, you cannot pour from an empty cup, which is valid. Stop doing that. So until you're able to prioritize rest, you will live in burnout indefinitely, without a doubt. You can read this, listen to it, write it out, doesn't matter. Until you're willing to sit down or to just rest or to go for a walk, it doesn't always have to be just like doing nothing, so to speak, but you can do nothing. That is okay. And if you're with somebody and you're in a round of somebody who's pushing a different narrative, you really want to consider readdressing that relationship. You don't necessarily want to do that. And of course, delegating tasks, we already talked about. I would love to delegate tasks when it comes to my business. Well, that takes money. I got to pay people. Nobody's going to be like, hey girl, let me do this as a solid. No, people deserve to get paid. I'm just not in a position right now where that's going to happen, but I'm trying to set myself up to do so. So I will delegate. It would be so much easier. I can accomplish many things, but around the house, I have no problem delegating. And I guarantee you I have no problem sitting down and resting. So if you can delegate that, and then of course, boundaries. You got to have boundaries for other people, but quite honestly, the boundaries for yourself matter way more than others, if I'm being honest. Stop at a certain time, start at a certain time. No, I know starting is hard. Don't sit there and be like, I'm in the groove. I'm in the groove. I was only going to do this for 20 minutes. Oh, look at me. I'm killing it. No, you're not. You are not killing it. You think you are. Burning yourself out. Then you ain't going to do shit for 4 weeks. It's okay to not complete a task. If you're going to do your whole desk, you can do the Pomodoro technique, which we will talk about. It is massively effective. I love that. Like I said, if you want productivity stuff, I can do a podcast or 6 on it. You got to be able to and disciplined to stop. Don't go into panic. Oh my God, if I stop, I'm never going to do it again. That's not true. Your brain is a reward system. Your brain needs to see accomplishments. That's why you put that in a short period of time to accomplish it. I promise you, you're okay. I promise you. And this is going to really help prevent that burnout a lot. I have all my little notes written down. So emotional maturity development, right? So your burnout, that's easy. I just address those things. Your emotional maturity development is you want to pause before reacting. Okay. Pause before reacting. Sounds silly, but this might be where you do count to 10. Okay. Oh, I want to, I can't, So it's count to 10. Yes. Count to 10. This is where it is effective, but I need you to really hardcore work on this. Your initial response isn't just emotional immaturity, it's your ego, which I guess is emotional maturity. Self-soothing. I am all about self-freaking soothing. Deep breathing, affirmations, again, only work if you have consistently worked it. Don't think that all of a sudden you're going to sit there and you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm in emotional immaturity. It's not working. Of course it isn't, because you don't do it when you're feeling good. Why do you think people stop therapy? Why do you think people stop taking their medicine? Why do you think people stop doing things? I feel better. I feel good. Well, are you consistently doing all of the other stuff you need to do? Because it's all about how you show up to yourself when you don't feel like it, when you're uncomfortable. And then it can rebound. And I mean, this is just scientifically proven. Immediately stopping things and only doing your journals when you're having a moment, only doing your breath work when you're having a moment, that's not going to be effective. That's not the fix. This is a lifelong journey. That means you have to commit to this lifelong. Affirmations are great, but I don't want you to do affirmations thinking that it's going to change your mindset right away. It's just a visual reminder. You can even take a dry erase marker and write on a mirror, right? Write a word on a mirror, write something on a mirror. A dry erase marker is great. At the end of the day, you take a rag or whatever and you erase it. And then tomorrow you have a new day to start. Put a different word on there. That's going to help you because it gives you something every day, every morning to say, I'm starting this day fresh. I'm starting this day over. Listen, some things will carry over. That's fine. The cognitive reframing, you already know, that's like a top of my list. Shifting from to accountability. Shifting from, okay? So past, thinking, oh my God, here I'm stuck. Oh my God, what am I going to do? To accountability for your own actions. So you don't want to constantly live in the past. You don't want to constantly pull something aboard to try to make sure that this proves that you are worthy and valuable. No, take accountability. Your ass is here now. Shifting from anything in the past. Shifting from. So if you're constantly what if and oh my God, what if, okay, you're going to have to shift and reframe that cognitively. And, you got to move from reactivity to emotional stability. And you know what? That's going to take you a minute. Again, unless you're willing to do the work and accept the accountability that you are in emotional immaturity. Until you're willing to do that, until you're willing to stop blaming everyone, blaming everything. Listen, it's going to go south. That's going to happen. How are you going to respond to it? And honestly, it's for you. It's not for anybody else. Who the hell wants to walk around? I lived it for a very long time. And I promise you that overreacting and constantly being on the ready is exhausting and it's quite miserable. When you're always in prep mode, you're always in survival mode, my God, it is miserable. Miserable. Not even halfway good. It's miserable. So this is to help you, but it is a slow process. You've got to commit to doing this and being accountable when it's not pretty, when it's the little things, when it's the planning, when it's the strategizing, when it's understanding the things are going to go forward and backwards. That is where change is. Not showing up because you feel good. Now you're going to do this and you're going to, oh my God, I had my water today. Okay, we'll do that shit every day. But that's how you're going to work through it. And now you have a little bit of an idea and understanding of the difference between burnout and immaturity. And it's going to really help you unbox these things to just, let's dismantle these. Let's dismantle them. We're going to do the worksheet. We're going to pop over to Patreon real quick now. But I just want you to realize that you don't have to stay in this place. It's exhausting. It's detrimental to your mental health, but also your physical health. So just pause, breathe. You are capable. Let's do the damn thing. Check it out.